Hey there, welcome to the Joyful Rebels podcast. You've got Claire and Donna Thomas here, your mother daughter duo, coming at you with a new episode today. We are going to be talking about a mental health reset. Time for a
Hmm.
quick reset. So, how this came about, sometimes we get asked, like, how did you think of this episode or where did you come up with this? For me, this week I was picking up my daughter from art and it was already dark as I was driving there to pick her up. So it was just kind of that, whoa, okay, less daylight. Like it kind of smacks you in the face sometimes. Oh,
Mhm.
seasons are changing. Uh, and so then I'm thinking about, man, it'd be nice to acknowledge some quick ways to kind of just check in, like do a little reset. How am I feeling? What can I do about it? And so I text you, mom. I'm like, I got this
Mhm.
idea. And you're like, wow, just thinking about that. And I love how, especially the past few weeks, it's been real serendipitous. Like, I'm thinking about this, me too. Like, we're really lining up. So, do you want to share, like, how have you been feeling about this topic in recent days or weeks?
Yeah, and I know that we've just recently had World Mental Health Day, which
Mm,
I also appreciate that there's a day to just acknowledge and have that be on the radar as a celebration of what can feel like doing work when actually I just think it's more of living a life of curiosity and exploration. And so, in the spirit of that, I noticed that too. Well, we've got a time change and it gets darker earlier, and I got to admit that I used to feel really down this time of year. The sunlight is different. Like the sun's in the sky in a different place. The days are shorter. It was signaling just a bunch of things that didn't feel fresh and renewed. And somehow this year, I'm like, okay, I feel it. It's getting darker, but I felt like energized. Like, okay, it's time to switch up my routine a little bit. And the change in the daylight and the season was a great precursor that I felt motivating for a change. Like, I don't know if anybody ever feels like, or, you, Claire, about like Sunday scaries. You get Sunday night and you're like, ooh, okay, we're getting ready for the week. That is a thing where people can feel anxious during that time period. It can also happen during transitions and seasons. And this year I was like, it's helping me have some energy to go, okay, well, if I don't have as much outdoor time, then how does that switch and how do I meet my need in another way? And the overall arc of that is I like my habits, I like the routines, I like the things that I do, but I am like everybody else. I can get complacent and I can get bored. And somehow the change in season and the daylight was helping prompt me to make some action and think about things before I got to that place. So I wasn't like getting stale where you ever have that thought where you're like, I got to do something differently. I was like, I don't know, everything's still working. Let's try something different though, just because I've got different resources at my fingertips. Like if it's going to be darker, I'm going to do more things that are more like meditation and yoga, which are indoors. And I can do that for seasons. So I have liked using this change to signal change. So change doesn't mean in my head, I'm redefining it. It's not like, oh, this is something that is historically not great. It's like, no, change is always good in some way. I always learn something. I always get a chance to try something different. And I like being in that space a whole lot more. And this time I'm starting to line up. So I feel more synergistic in my life. That's where it felt for me. Like, okay, like it's going to be darker. What other opportunities come up because of that? So that was new for me. And that felt really good. So that's a win. I'm gonna take that as a
that's a
win.
win. No, for sure. And it's like you're getting ahead of it. You're putting in
Yes.
that thought, you're noticing, right? So, what does it start with? If you're like, rewind it, back it up, it's that awareness. Okay, seasons are changing. I'm noticing. Also, it's that acknowledgement of this might be how I've acted in the past, but then it's like mind open, zooming out, what else is available to me?
Mhm.
Because, like we were talking about before, mom, doing this type of work, doing these little quick resets that we're going to get into in a second here, uh, it doesn't have to be at the point where you're feeling completely broken and, like you said, digging yourself out of a hole. Like, it's okay. This is awesome if we're acknowledging, hey, maybe I have the capacity right now or the option to switch up my routine a bit. Again, getting ahead of it. Seasons are going to happen, right? So, what can we do about it? And it really does feel empowering to know, oh, I have a choice. I have a say in this. And
Mhm.
again, these tips that we're going to give you, options, my friends. You try them on, oh yeah, this one really speaks to me. I'm going to try it out. Another one, maybe not so much. And that's okay. You're allowed to do that. And you're allowed to do some self work and put some time and energy in yourself, even when your baseline feels okay.
Yeah.
That really is a joyful rebels thing right there. Even when you're okay, we're going to put in that time, energy to explore, to learn more about ourselves, even when we're not at our lowest low. So, with that being said, today we've got 4 tips for you. Again, if you're looking to do a quick mental health reset as the seasons change. So, the first tip that you can do is to focus on reaching out to other people. This is one that really spoke to me because I spent years, so my youngest is 4, and I really feel like only recently I'm coming out of a fog.
Mm.
I feel like the past 10 years almost, it's been littles, 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 and all the things and all the energy that come with that. And during that time, I felt like I was allowed to say, I don't have the capacity to really be the friend who's always reaching out and checking on others. I felt like my energy was so consumed with what was going on in the home that I just didn't have that extra capacity to be reaching out. And so if that's where you're at in your season, give yourself some grace. Like that is a thing. That is a
Yeah.
thing. But for me, what's interesting is I'm starting to notice, wait, I do have a bit more mental capacity now. I'm noticing people in my life that are still in the little stage, and I'm thinking, I can be the person to reach out to them. And that might seem insignificant, but it really does feel big. It's this big shift of like, wait, I can be someone who's reaching out to communicate with the loved one, with the friend. Because let's be honest, communication and connection is incredibly important. And we know that feeling isolated can bring down your overall sense of well being,
Mhm.
lower happiness if you feel isolated, like you don't have any connections, especially if you're living in a little bubble, with your littles. But even if you're just noticing that you've got a lot of messages left hanging there, because that's me, I'm guilty of that. I have so many text messages that are just living out there, and oh, well, I didn't answer this in 2 days. Now, every time I go to it, I'm like, oh, like I didn't answer. Okay, so what am I doing about that? When I go to bed now, and this is my little tip for the reset, when I go to bed at night, I take just a few seconds and I think, who am I going to reach out to tomorrow? This can be a phone call, this can be a text or a Facebook message, anything. Who am I going to reach out to tomorrow? So then I'll think, okay, was there a message that I haven't got to? Because let's be honest, if you look at your messages and there's a ton that are unread or unresponded to, that can feel overwhelming. So I
Mhm.
might just close it and not even address it. But this makes it feel doable. Okay, this is the one person I'm going to respond to. Or I've been meaning to email the teacher about this. Like just pick one line of communication that, and again, it can be a low hanging fruit. I haven't talked to my sister in a week. I'm going to text her tomorrow. And that's what I choose to do. So then in the morning or sometime throughout my day, that's one of the things that, I might not have that on my habit tracker. Maybe I should.
Mm.
A light bulb, but it's
Mhm.
one of those things that I'll mentally check off like, okay, in my day. And again, it's going to take a couple seconds because let's be honest, I'm not doing that many phone calls with people, but I'm going to be texting or messaging. And even if it's just to touch back in, to touch base with someone, to respond, like, because maybe one of the messages I'm putting off required a response from me, like, oops. But in the past, I might have just let that slide for months, forever, letting that connection maybe fizzle away. But now I'm noticing, okay, I can put some energy there. And in terms of a mental health reset, you're enhancing connections there. You are the one that's helping to contribute to keep that conversation going. So it's something that
Mhm.
you can do start today. And again, all these tips are things that you can be thinking about today. That's why we're calling it quick reset tips. So that's my tip number one, reaching out to others. Should I go into tip number two? Should I
Go
just do
for it.
my two? Let's just do it.
Yeah.
Second tip for me for a quick mental health reset, think about your sleep. I'm going to say boldly to prioritize sleep because I know a lot of us are not doing that, but even to have a think about your sleep hygiene. And so this has been really top of mind for me because one of my biggest vices has been, I take a lot of time, honestly, and a lot of mental space and energy to think about the ways in my life, are my behaviors lining up with my core values?
Mhm.
We've been talking about this a lot. I've been thinking about it a lot. One of the things that I don't like that I do is I just will scroll through my phone and different apps at night as I'm going to bed. because I'm not doing that during the day. Good. That's one of the things I didn't want to do during the day. But it's why should I be filling my brain with that right before I'm going to bed? Like we can all be like, that's not great, but raise your hand if you do it.
Right.
So, maybe the end goal for me will be let me put the phone away an hour before bed, but I'm still laying in bed. I'm not necessarily going to sleep yet. So I've switched that to a time where I read. And y'all have heard me talking about my car book. Well, now I've got my before bed book. I'm really branching out here. But it's taking a time where I'm doing something for sleep and shifting it. So now I feel like that energy is better spent before bed. Now, looking at your sleep hygiene can look so many ways. What time are you going to bed? What are you doing before bed? And maybe there's things we talked about before, like box breathing. If you're having trouble falling asleep, that's an excellent exercise. If you go back to our time to meditate episode, where we do this really short, simple exercise that can help just get your body ready for sleep. But for me, it was what am I doing right before sleep? I'm consuming something that's not great for my mental health. I'm going to switch the focus to something else. So, again, it's not perfecting or completely turning the habit on its head, but it was, I'm thinking about my sleep. How can I improve it a bit? So, my tip for you is can you have a think about your sleep hygiene? And is there any simple shifts that you can make to maybe improve your sleep habits, which can in turn improve well being, happiness, the good things? What do you
Hmm.
think?
I love it because it seems like you're I don't know if I like the phrase killing two birds with one stone, but I know that you're a reader, and when you're in your day and you're paying attention in your day, that's not going to be a time to check the box for scrolling the phone. I mean, that's exactly counterintuitive to that. So I love it that you're able to kind of bundle that together. Like I'll read at night and make sure that that's what's happening, and it still feels better. It's making progress because it's not a perfection thing ever. It's about doing something that's moving closer toward where you want to be. And that feels really good. And that goes unnoticed and uncelebrated in my life sometimes. So I like that we get a chance to talk about it because that is a big deal. I love it. And you're reading more and you're being able to do that. And that makes a lot of sense and it's unique to you. And I love the unique part too. So you have your ways of showing up in the world and noticing that in this season, different opportunities are opening up for you to make changes. I think that's the awareness part that really lands for me because I'm seeing it too. Different season, different ways that things are open to me, but knowing that that happens instead of really in hindsight seeing, oh, things were really different, like getting ahead of it. So
Yeah.
getting ahead of it doesn't mean that I'm just striving and I have to stay in front of it. It's living in real time and making decisions that feel good based on the things that you know about yourself. So I love that you talk about it at night and the things that you're doing at night. Because if I add another quick tip on there, one of them is to start your day with a stabilizing routine. So I'll talk about that in a second, but starting your day with a stabilizing routine, ending it at night with something that's meaningful, that gets you closer to your goals. What I love about that, the overall arc is that let's think about it, guys. In the very first thing in the morning and right before you go to bed, do you think that your mind is susceptible to the images and the information that we put in there? And my answer to that would be yes, especially first thing in the morning. What do I consume? What does it look like before I go to bed? Those are tender times. And once I realized that those have great influence because my subconscious mind or my conscious mind isn't all revved up and ready to go, where I just have uh all my ways to be in the world like all set up. I'm kind of off guard at those times because I'm starting to either ramp up or wind down. So for me, starting with a stabilizing routine is not something that's new, but what I want to say is morning routine can be anything before 12 noon. So let me say it that way. So if when I talk about being 5:30 in the morning and a bunch of people like, I am turning you off now because that is not me, because that wasn't me for decades, decades and decades. But when I start my day with some ways to change and insulate, protect, and celebrate my mental health, how I'm feeling, I feel like I'm nourished and energized, then I make way better decisions later on in the day.
Mm.
I get a chance to quiet my mind. For me, it's going to be exercise early, but that's not the only thing that I have. I have devotional time in the morning. Like I get myself in my faith-based information and word, and that changes everything for me. But I'm getting it in. And so it doesn't have to be 5:30 in the morning for you, but it's anything before noon. So sometimes, again, if you're in a season where you have littles and you're dropping them off at school, maybe that's when your morning grounding routines start. So get creative with what that is. Put it in a time frame that works for you. Don't just throw it away because it's like it's not early morning. It doesn't matter. But being able, for me to be able to move, have purpose, feel like I accomplished something in a way that honors my body and where I'm at right now, I feel that I make way better decisions during the day. I feel better about the decisions, and I want to stay in that place of responding to stimulation as opposed to reacting.
Mm,
And I feel like it's like a vote for me. I get it. Like, okay, I did it today. I'm making better choices. I feel good about it. It doesn't need to be perfect because the wins are accruing all along the way that just are so nourishing and sustain me. They keep me going. The little wins now, instead of, it's not like digging out of a hole. It's like, let's just get the momentum moving more. That's
mm.
a different space for me. I've been in plenty of times in my life where I'm like, I am digging out. I've got pain. I don't like where I'm at. I need to make big changes. And if you're listening and that's you, got it. Got it. There's some work to be done there, and it can be done. It can be shifted, but it all starts with this little stuff. And the little stuff is the stuff that you sustain to keep it going. So it all has a place there. So I'm going to start with the stabilizing morning routine that helps me to feel really good. And it also helps me to weather the changes in the seasons because I can change what I do in the morning, but I know something's happening in the morning. Okay, that's one of them. The other one, it seems, and there's so many ways that this can show up in our lives, or ways to just have these quick mental health boosts. And I wasn't I wasn't acknowledging it in giving it as much power as it has for me. But if you have a pet, and we have two big dogs, and I always will walk over and be like, hey, how's it going, and give him a little pat. I am making time to go over and give him some big bear hugs and hanging out. But the difference is, I mean, I love it when I do that, but I'm in there going like, this is so good for both of us. I love it. And I'm knowing that as I'm doing it. So it's like, go cuddle your pets. Okay, that doesn't mean if they don't want you to cuddle them, then don't. But the I don't want to leave that on the table because sometimes I get busy. I hate even saying that, but I do. And there'll be a whole day has gone by where I haven't even acknowledged my pet enough, as much as I want to. So go hang with the people, the other things that are living in your house with you, and spend time really being consciously aware. Like, this is a good thing. I'm going to drink it all in. I'm going to be aware of what I'm doing because I can go through the motions and things that I do in my day and just do them. Or each thing that I go to execute, go to do, go to think about, I'll do it through the lens of, this is awesome. This is part of my life. I get to do this. It feels great. And I'm investing in myself and loving on myself with every move that I make, whether it's responding to texts or an email or what I do at night or what I do in the morning. The little stuff will keep you going. And I never understood the power of that, and now I'm starting to. I'll say it like that. I'm starting to. I wonder where it'll take us. What do you think about that, Claire?
As you're talking about that, it's just bringing to mind a recent example, similar but different, of I took one of my daughters running with me. She
Mm.
had wanted to, and she is in a program at school where they're running. And I am a slow runner, and I'm totally cool with that. Just moving my body. But I, kind of stay at a regular pace. That feels good for me. I try to have my breathing be normal, at a certain cadence. What I would notice is that when the kids are with me, they'll sprint really hard and try to go really fast and then totally burn out, and they're like in pain, and they're walking as I catch up to them at my slow cadence. And it's back and forth like that. And so it reminded me of what you were talking about, because I'll say to them, I'll say, it's much easier to go through and just stay at this medium slow pace. I get that, you want to really go big and hard, but then you fall back, and then you're feeling at this deficit and you're hurting. So then you put this big effort again, and it's just this cycle that makes it really unenjoyable for everyone involved. But it reminds me of what you're saying, and I wrote down, you said it's the little wins that are giving you that momentum, and I completely agree with that it's staying at that pace that's sustainable and feels doable and easy, and then you're racking up these little wins. You're getting all these pieces of evidence to believe in yourself. You're doing what you're doing. Confidence is building. It really just keeps that momentum going. And that's easier than kind of waiting till you're in a pit and then having to do a huge concentrated effort to get yourself out and then kind of going in this drought and of not taking care of yourself, not checking in with yourself, then all of a sudden I need this big effort again. So I can see it in real life and running with the kids, but also it just makes so much sense when you talk about how you want to live your life in terms of doing the things that you want to do that are checking those boxes, that are also working towards your goals, and really just being able to find that contentment and that satisfaction from the little wins. So I
Mm,
love that too. It maybe sounds, again, might sound insignificant in description, but living it, it feels big. You're like, whoa, like it's
yeah.
easier and feels better. Like if that's not a win-win, I don't know
Well,
what it is.
that makes me think, and this was I posted it on my stories of you know, taking care of yourself doesn't need to be in response to stress. I mean, sometimes it does, and I think that you have to have some reserves in order to tackle the big stuff. You do, for sure. I'm not living in a bubble here. But what it seems to me the shift is that it's just this ongoing process of wanting to have optimal health in your physical, mental, spiritual well-being. Like it's optimal. I don't want to be like this close from disease. I just want to live the best that I can. But it just takes all these little tiny deposits that then actually build the stamina and the resiliency that when the big stuff comes in my life, knock on wood, but like I believe I can handle them better. And I believe that I've got some reserves and I'm in the game with all of it. And it requires me paying attention, and the paying attention is another skill. But once you do it, once your awareness light is turned on, you're like, okay, I'm in. I'm in. And it just serves, I feel so much better serving myself and everybody around me when I do that. And it's not an effort. Like the little things I feel like I can incorporate, and they're not like it takes so much to keep them on my radar that they just become part of who I am. And
Mm,
they become similar to and integrated with the ways that I believe, the things that I believe in. When all that's like meshed together, then it feels like a pretty light way to just kind of skip through life. And that doesn't mean the bad stuff doesn't happen. It does. But we'll weather it, and we'll weather it together with our tribes. We'll weather it, singularly in the ways that we can, but we've got some reserves in order to tackle it. And that feels like I'm coming from a place of abundance rather than I'm trying to scrape my way out of a hole.
hmm Yeah. And if you're listening, sometimes these topics that we have, like, they're always relevant to what's happening with you and I, mom. Like, that's how that they come about. They're things we're experiencing. And we've said before, you might be listening to a topic and it's not super top of mind for you, but we're offering these tips and tools for when it's relevant. But as these seasons are changing, more of you are listening might be experiencing that. Oh, this season is changing. So, like you said, mom, in the beginning, noticing that and getting out ahead of it a bit. So, to recap, if you're looking for a quick mental health reset, you're noticing, there's less sunlight, if you're noticing feeling down, four things that you can do today for this quick reset. One, reach out to someone. It's okay if you haven't answered a text in a couple days. Okay. No, they're not judging you. Okay. We've all been there. So maybe the night before or tonight, who are you going to reach out to tomorrow? And then speaking of sleep, number two, ask yourself, how's your sleep routine? How's your sleep hygiene? Are you scrolling through, doom scrolling before bed? Because that brings us to number three. We want to find a stabilizing routine. And mom, I love how you called those tender times in the early morning and before bed. So acknowledging that those times, we want to be really intentional about what we're consuming.
Mhm.
So maybe figuring out your stabilizing AM or PM routine. And then finally, go cuddle your pet, or maybe it's another loved one. Or more broadly, when you're doing something small that you enjoy, notice it. I am enjoying this. Like just be in the moment because you're going to get more enjoyment out of it. So, for you listening, which one of these tips are you going to try in the next week? And let us know how it goes. Until next time, Rebels.